London, 1858. Miss Katherine Morgan stood at the window of the schoolroom, watching raindrops trace silvery paths down the glass. Behind her, Lady Emily and Lady Charlotte Wyndham completed their French exercises with the diligence that came from knowing their governess was strict but fair. Katherine adjusted her plain grey dress, her one concession to vanity being the perfectly starched collar that framed her face, and turned back to her charges. "Very good, Lady Emily. Your conjugations are improving," she said, her voice quiet but clear. "Lady Charlotte, please mind your accent on the past participle." At 26, Katherine had accepted that her life would continue thus, invisible except when needed, respected but never truly seen. It was the natural order of things. Governesses occupied that peculiar liminal space, too educated to be servants, too poor to be ladies. She had made peace with this. After all, hadn't her mother's experience proven that love across social boundaries led only to ruin? Her mother, once a lady's companion, had fallen in love with a gentleman who promised marriage, only to abandon her when she became with child. Katherine had grown up witnessing her mother's struggle, shame, and eventual decline into consumption, all because she dared to believe a man who saw her only as temporary amusement. "I shall never make that mistake," Katherine had vowed at her mother's grave 10 years ago. "I shall rely on myself alone." The Wyndham household had been her home for 3 years now, the longest she had stayed in any position. The Countess of Ravensdale was fair, if distant, and the girls were bright and generally well-behaved. The vast estate was peaceful, and Katherine had fashioned a life for herself in the margins of grand society. If sometimes she felt a hollow ache when watching the girls embrace their mother, or when observing the glittering balls from the upper gallery, well, such feelings were best suppressed. "Miss Morgan?" Lady Charlotte's voice broke through her reverie. "May we practice the pianoforte now? You promised after our French was complete." "Of course," Katherine replied, gathering the papers. "Your mother mentioned that you both shall be playing at Lord and Lady Harrington's spring musicale next month. We must ensure you are prepared." As they descended to the music room, Katherine heard unfamiliar male voices from the entrance hall. Visitors were common enough at Ravensdale Manor, but something about the timbre of one particular voice, deep, resonant, with a quiet authority that came from never needing to demand attention, made her pause on the landing. "Ah, Wyndham, good of you to welcome us on such short notice," the voice said. The road from London was abysmal after those rains. The Countess's voice floated up. "My brother insists we offer Westmoreland Abbey for your forestry experiments, Your Grace. Though I confess I'm surprised to find the Duke of Kensington personally overseeing such matters. I find direct observation yields better results than reports, Lady Ravensdale," the voice replied. "Besides, London society grows tedious this time of year." Katherine ushered the girls forward, intending to slip past the entrance hall unnoticed as always. But as they reached the ground floor, the Countess spotted them. "Ah, my daughters! Come and greet your uncle and the Duke of Kensington." Katherine kept her eyes downcast as she guided her charges forward. The girls curtsied prettily to their uncle and the Duke, a tall figure in Katherine's peripheral vision. "And this is Miss Morgan, the girl's governess," the Countess said with the perfunctory introduction required by manners but not interest. Katherine dipped into a perfect curtsy. "Your Grace, Lord Wyndham." When she straightened, she found herself pinned by the most penetrating gaze she had ever encountered. The Duke of Kensington was younger than she had expected, perhaps 35, with striking features that spoke of intelligence rather than mere handsomeness. His eyes, a stormy blue-grey, seemed to look not at her but into her. "Miss Morgan," he said, inclining his head slightly. It was the briefest of acknowledgments, yet Katherine felt oddly exposed, as if he had somehow seen past her carefully constructed invisibility. She quickly escorted the girls to the music room, dismissing the peculiar sensation as imagination. But that evening, as she took her solitary dinner in her small sitting room adjoining the schoolroom, a knock came at her door. A footman stood there, looking uncomfortable. "Miss Morgan, His Grace the Duke of Kensington requests your presence in the library. He has some questions about the educational practices at Ravensdale." Catherine's heart stuttered. "The Duke wishes to speak with me?" "Not the Countess. His Grace was most specific, miss." Bewildered, Catherine smoothed her hair and straightened her dress. Governesses rarely interacted with male guests. It was improper, unnecessary, and unprecedented in her experience. The library was dimly lit by a fire and several lamps, creating pools of golden light amid the towering bookshelves. The Duke stood by the window, his tall figure silhouetted against the night sky. "Miss Morgan," he said, turning as the footman announced her. "Thank you for joining me." Catherine curtsied. "Your Grace, I understand you have questions about the young lady's education. Please, sit." He gestured to a chair near the fire. When she hesitated, he added, "I assure you, the door shall remain open, and your reputation is safe." She sat gingerly on the edge of the chair. The Duke, Lord Liam Wentworth, she recalled from gossip among the servants, observed her with that same unsettling intensity. "I noticed Lady Charlotte's excellent accent. You speak French like a native." "I was fortunate to spend 2 years in Paris as a girl, Your Grace." "Before becoming a governess?" "Yes." She offered no elaboration. He tilted his head slightly. "And what brought you to this profession, Miss Morgan? You seem uncommonly refined for a governess." The question bordered on impertinence. "Necessity brings many women to this profession, Your Grace." "Indeed." He paced slowly before the fireplace. "And I suspect necessity is also what keeps many women in positions where their true value goes unrecognized." Catherine's spine stiffened. "A governess's value lies in her ability to shape young minds, Your Grace. Recognition is not the purpose." "Is that so?" His lips curved slightly. "Then you have never wished for more than to fade into the background of other people's lives." The directness of his question, and its uncomfortable accuracy, left her momentarily speechless. "My wishes are immaterial," she finally replied. "I have a respectable position and perform it to the best of my abilities." A diplomatic answer. He selected a book from a nearby shelf. "Are you familiar with Mary Wollstonecraft, Miss Morgan?" "Of course," she replied, surprised by the change in topic. What of her argument that women are rendered weak by society's expectations rather than by nature? Catherine hesitated. Such discussions were dangerous territory for someone in her position. "I think that society structures exist for reasons beyond my humble understanding." His eyebrow arched. "You don't believe that?" "Your Grace." "Your eyes, Miss Morgan, reveal your disagreement even as your lips speak conformity." He closed the book. "I find that fascinating." A strange tension filled the air between them. Catherine rose, unsettled. "If there's nothing specific about the young lady's curriculum, I should return to my duties." "Of course." He bowed slightly. "But I shall be at Ravensdale for several weeks. Perhaps we might continue our discussion of literature another time." "That would be highly irregular, Your Grace." "Would it?" "I find intellectual conversation is rarely irregular, merely uncommon." As Catherine left the library, her heart pounded inexplicably. She told herself it was merely the discomfort of being noticed when she had grown accustomed to invisibility. Over the next fortnight, Katherine found herself crossing paths with the Duke in ways that seemed both accidental and inevitable. He appeared in the gallery when she took the girls to view portraits for their history lesson. He requested to observe their music practice. He rode beside the carriage when the Countess permitted an educational excursion to the Roman ruins on the estate's boundary. Each encounter left Katherine more confused than the last. The Duke treated her with a respect that bordered on equality, discussing books, asking her opinions, actually listening to her answers. Yet he maintained impeccable propriety, never once overstepping the boundaries that separated a duke from a governess. The Countess had noticed. "His Grace seems to value your educational approach, Miss Morgan," she remarked one morning, her tone suggesting she found this puzzling but not yet concerning. "He speaks highly of your methods." Katherine had murmured something appropriate about His Grace's interest in modern education, all the while knowing that their conversations ranged far beyond teaching techniques. One afternoon, finding herself alone in the library during her rare free hour, Katherine reached for a volume on a high shelf. A hand appeared beside hers, retrieving the book effortlessly. "Dante," the Duke said, examining her choice. In the original Italian, no less. Katherine stepped back, flustered by his sudden proximity. "I'm attempting to improve my Italian, Your Grace." Most governesses would choose something more practical. He handed her the book, their fingers brushing momentarily. "But you're not like most governesses, are you, Miss Morgan? I assure you I am entirely ordinary. Is that what you tell yourself?" His voice softened. "That if you remain ordinary, unremarkable, invisible, you'll be safe." The question struck too close to the truth. Safety is no small consideration for a woman alone in the world. "And is that all you desire from life?" "Safety." Before she could answer, footsteps approached. The Duke moved away smoothly, selecting his own book as Lord Wyndham entered. "Ah, there you are, Wentworth. The surveyor has arrived from London." The Duke nodded, then turned to Katherine. "Excuse me, Miss Morgan. We shall continue our discussion of Dante another time." That night, Katherine couldn't sleep. The Duke's questions had disturbed something long dormant within her, hopes and desires she had buried alongside her mother. She had constructed her life around invisibility, believing it the only protection against heartbreak and ruin. Yet in the Duke's presence she felt seen in a way that was both terrifying and exhilarating. "This is madness," she whispered to her reflection. "He is a duke. You are nothing." The annual Mayday festivities arrived, and the entire estate buzzed with preparation. Even the schoolroom was not exempt, as the young ladies were to perform in the traditional pageant. Katherine supervised their rehearsals while keeping a careful distance from the Duke, who had been called to London on business but was expected to return for the celebration. The morning of the festival dawned clear and bright. Katherine dressed her charges in their finery and sent them to their mother, then donned her own best dress, still plain grey, but with subtle embroidery at the collar and cuffs. Her one indulgence was loosening her chestnut hair from its severe bun into a softer style. The grounds were transformed with ribbons and flowers. Tenants and villagers mingled with the gentry in the one day of relative social equality. Katherine maintained her customary position on the periphery, watching her pupils perform flawlessly in the pageant. "They do you credit," came a familiar voice. Katherine turned to find the Duke beside her, resplendent in formal attire that somehow didn't diminish his air of understated power. "Your Grace," she curtsied. "I didn't realize you had returned. This morning." His eyes moved over her face, lingering on her hair. "You look different today, Miss Morgan. The festival permits certain informalities. It becomes you." He offered his arm. "Walk with me? I've been considering what you said about the Browning translation. Against her better judgment, Katherine placed her hand on his sleeve. They strolled along the edge of the celebration, their conversation flowing easily from literature to philosophy to memories of Italy, where both had travelled in their youth. "You surprise me at every turn," he said as they paused beneath an ancient oak. "Most ladies of society cannot discuss Aristotle between discussions of the weather." "I am not a lady of society," she reminded him. "No. You are far more interesting." His gaze held hers. "Why do you hide your light, Katherine?" The use of her Christian name should have shocked her. Instead, it felt like a key turning in a long rusted lock. "My mother," she began, then stopped. "It doesn't matter." "It matters to me." Before she could respond, Lord Wyndham approached with a gentleman Katherine had never seen before. "Wentworth, there you are. Look who's arrived, Sir James Fairfield, just returned from India." The newcomer, a distinguished man of perhaps 50, stared at Katherine with growing confusion. "I beg your pardon, but might you be related to Eliza Morgan?" The world seemed to tilt beneath Katherine's feet. "She was my mother, sir." Sir James paled visibly. "Good God! Then you must be—" He stopped, looking between Katherine and the Duke. "Forgive me, Your Grace. I didn't realize." "Realize what, Sir James?" the Duke asked sharply. "Nothing. A mistake." Sir James bowed stiffly. "Miss Morgan, we must speak privately at some point. About your mother. And other matters." As he retreated, Katherine felt the weight of three men's gazes upon her. Lord Wyndham looked puzzled, Sir James troubled, and the Duke's expression was unreadable. "Excuse me," she whispered, gathering her skirts. "I must check on the girls." She fled, heart pounding. Her mother's name, spoken in that tone of recognition, it could only mean disaster. The past she had so carefully buried was rising to engulf her. That evening, a note arrived from Sir James requesting a meeting the following morning in the Rose Garden. Katherine barely slept, her mind racing with possibilities, none of them good. Dawn found her pacing the Rose Garden, wrapped in her shawl against the morning chill. Sir James arrived promptly, his face grave. "Miss Morgan, I hardly know how to begin." "You knew my mother?" "Yes." He twisted his hat in his hands. "I was deeply acquainted with Eliza Morgan 27 years ago." The implication was clear. Katherine's throat tightened. "You are my father." He nodded once, sharply. "I loved your mother desperately. When she told me she was with child, I meant to marry her immediately. But my father threatened to disinherit me, and I hesitated. When I finally found the courage to defy him, Eliza had disappeared." "She believed you had abandoned her," Katherine said flatly. "She lived in shame and poverty because of it." "I searched for years," he insisted. "By the time I found where she had gone, she had died, and you had already left the orphanage." Katherine wrapped her arms around herself. "Why tell me now? After all this time?" "Because you deserve to know your heritage." "I have no legitimate children, Katherine. Everything I possess will be yours." The revelation should have brought joy, an end to financial insecurity, a restoration of the social position her mother had lost. Instead, Katherine felt only hollow disbelief. "Does anyone else know?" "No. Not yet." He stepped closer. "But I intend to acknowledge you publicly. To give you your rightful place." "My rightful place?" She laughed bitterly. "Sir James, I have spent my entire life hiding my mother's shame. I built a respectable life by becoming invisible. And now you would make me the subject of every gossip in England." It needn't be scandalous. With my position and fortune, it will destroy everything I've built, she interrupted. The Countess would never keep a governess with such a history. You wouldn't need employment. But I would need respect. Katherine shook her head. Please, say nothing. Not yet. I need time. He reluctantly agreed, but as he left, Katherine saw the Duke standing at the entrance to the garden. His expression confirmed her worst fear. He had heard everything. She fled to the schoolroom, throwing herself into lessons with fierce concentration. But that afternoon, a note arrived summoning her to the Countess's private sitting room. Miss Morgan, Lady Ravensdale said when Katherine entered, I've received troubling information about your background. Katherine's heart sank. My lady, Sir James Fairfield has informed me that you are his natural daughter. The Countess's voice was cold. While I sympathize with your difficult circumstances, you must understand that I cannot have someone of an irregular birth influencing my daughters. I have never been anything but proper. Your mere existence is improper, the Countess cut in. I require your resignation, effective immediately. I shall provide a month's wages in lieu of notice. Katherine stood frozen, her worst fears realized. Where shall I go? That is hardly my concern. The Countess rang for her lady's maid. You may remain until morning. The carriage will take you to the station. Dismissed and disgraced, Katherine returned to her room. With mechanical precision, she began packing her few possessions, tears blurring her vision. Everything she had feared had come to pass. Her carefully constructed life was collapsing because of a birth she couldn't control and a father who had decided, too late, to claim her. A soft knock interrupted her misery. She opened the door to find the Duke standing there, his face grave. May I come in? Propriety dictated she refuse. Despair made her step aside. You've heard, then, she said, turning back to her packing. About my disgraceful origins. There is no disgrace in being born, he replied, remaining near the door. The circumstances were not of your making. Tell that to the Countess. And to every respectable household that will now close its doors to me. Katherine. His voice softened. Look at me. She turned reluctantly, expecting pity. Instead, his eyes held an emotion she couldn't name, something intense and determined. I heard your conversation with Sir James, he admitted. Not by design, but I cannot pretend ignorance. Then you know why I must leave. I know why the Countess believes you must leave. I disagree. It hardly matters what you think, she said bitterly. I am ruined. Only if you accept that judgment. He stepped closer. Katherine, from the moment I saw you, I recognized something in you, a light you deliberately dimmed, an intelligence you carefully hid, a beauty you purposefully obscured. Your Grace, Liam, he corrected. My name is Liam. This is most improper. Propriety has never been my primary concern. He took her hands in his. For weeks, I've watched you. Talked with you. Come to understand you. And I've seen how you've constructed your entire life around being invisible because you fear being seen would lead to ruin. Katherine tried to pull away, but he held firm. But don't you see, he continued. Your invisibility didn't protect you. It merely delayed the inevitable. And it robbed you, and the world, of who you truly are. And who am I? She whispered. A woman of extraordinary mind and spirit. A woman who deserves far more than hiding in shadows. His words unleashed the dam of emotion she'd held back for so long. What does it matter what I deserve? Society has rules, Your Grace. A woman born like me has no place in it. Society's rules are made by men like me, he replied. Men who too often lack the courage to challenge them. Before she could respond, he reached into his pocket and withdrew a small box. I came to Ravensdale with a purpose, Katherine. To observe the forestry, yes, but also to find peace after years of pressure to marry for advantage. I never expected to find someone who awakened my mind and heart. He opened the box, revealing a ring of sapphires and diamonds. Katherine gasped. This is madness, she breathed. Perhaps. His smile was gentle. Or perhaps it's the first sane choice I've made. I love you, Katherine Morgan. Not despite who you are, but because of it. You cannot possibly, I can. I do. He took her hand again. You thought no one noticed you, but I saw you from the first moment. Every conversation confirmed what I suspected, that you are the woman I've been searching for without knowing it. Katherine shook her head, tears streaming down her face. The scandal would be unbearable. A duke marrying a governess, an illegitimate governess. Scandal fades. Love endures. He cupped her face. Besides, you'll be Lady Catherine Fairfield once Sir James makes his announcement. A baronet's daughter is hardly unsuitable. The ton will never accept me. Some won't, he agreed. Others will follow my lead because of my title and fortune. And those who matter, those capable of seeing beyond circumstances of birth, will love you as I do. Katherine trembled, caught between lifelong fear and unexpected hope. I don't know how to be seen, she confessed. I've spent so long hiding. Then we'll learn together. He pressed his forehead to hers. You were meant to be mine, Katherine. And I was meant to be yours. The world may not understand it yet, but they will. In that moment, Katherine saw the truth. Her invisibility had been a prison of her own making. Her mother's pain had taught her to hide, but this man, this impossible, wonderful man, was offering her the chance to step into the light. Yes, she whispered, and it felt like the first truly free word she had ever spoken. The Duke, Liam, slipped the ring onto her finger, then drew her into a kiss that sealed their improbable future. 3 months later, Katherine stood before the ornate mirror in the Duchess's chambers at Kensington House, hardly recognizing the woman who gazed back. Gone was the severe governess in grey. In her place stood a woman in ivory silk, her chestnut hair adorned with diamonds, her eyes bright with confidence. The scandal had indeed been tremendous. For weeks, the gossip sheets had spoken of nothing else. The Duke of Kensington's shocking alliance with the natural daughter of Sir James Fairfield, formerly a governess at Ravensdale Manor. Katherine had endured pointed snubs, whispered insults, and outright hostility from much of society. But she had also found unexpected allies. The Duchess of Richmond, who declared that breeding shows regardless of circumstances. Lord Pembroke, who had himself married a merchant's daughter and found her worth 10 aristocratic brides. And most surprisingly, Lady Charlotte Wyndham, who had written a touching letter, "You taught me to value knowledge above station. I shall not forget that lesson, even if Mamma has." Sir James had formally acknowledged Katherine as his daughter and heir, granting her not only his name but a substantial fortune of her own. Too little, too late, he had said with regret, but given with a father's love nonetheless. A knock at the door heralded Liam's entrance. He paused, his eyes traveling over her transformed appearance. "You are magnificent," he said simply. "I feel exposed," she admitted. "Everyone will be watching." "Let them watch." He approached, taking her hands. "They'll see what I've always seen, a woman of grace, intelligence, and unmatched worth. Some still say you married beneath you. Then they are fools." He kissed her brow. for I have married precisely where my heart led me." Katherine smiled, acknowledging the truth in his words. The path had not been easy, but each step had brought her further from shadows into light. "Are you ready?" he asked. "Our guests await." "I am ready," she replied, and meant it. Ready not just for this evening's ball, their first official entertainment as husband and wife, but for the life that stretched before them. A life where she was no longer invisible but gloriously, undeniably seen. As they descended the grand staircase together, Katherine felt the weight of every gaze. But instead of shrinking as she once would have, she stood tall beside her husband, her chin lifted. The Duke leaned close, his voice a warm murmur against her ear. "You shine like a star, my love." "Only because you taught me how to be seen," she whispered back. And as they entered the ballroom, moving through the crowd that parted before them, Katherine finally understood. Visibility brought vulnerability, yes, but also power, joy, and the profound freedom of being truly known and loved. The governess who had thought no one noticed her had become a duchess whom everyone watched. But the only gaze that mattered was the one that had seen her worth from the beginning, the eyes of the man who had whispered, "You were meant to be mine," and by doing so, had given her the courage to believe it.